I'm in gray sweats. I punt a ball as we're in warm up screwing around because Hayden used to come out early with the kickers and he was way down and I hit a rare, really good one and it was going right at him. And I remember Tommy Nichols saying, "You need to yell heads up." And I was like, "No, I can't. That's Hayden Fry. It's the head coach. I can't." And it hits him back of the head. Hat comes off. And he looks around and what do? You kind of look the other way.
You point to that guy?
And Tommy Nichols goes, "Oh, you got to go say something or we're all in trouble." I'm like, "No, I'm not going to do that." And Tommy Nichols, he's a starting kicker. I'm like, all right. So I run down and I'm like, "All right, you got to own it." I ran up to Coach Fry and said, "Coach Fry, I really apologize. I was the guy that kicked that. And I'm sorry I hit you." And he looked at me and he goes, "You kicked it?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "You're pretty accurate." He wasn't pissed. He had a good sense of humor about it. And I look back at it like 43 years later and I think, wow, what a good leader.
Welcome to the Gallery and Hurley Unfiltered podcast, Iowa Football Rewind.
Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast player to get a behind-the-scenes look that you won't find anywhere else.
Tonight we have Hawkeye legend Rob Houghtlin. Rob, welcome.
Great to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Good seeing you.
Good seeing you. Why don't we start and just go back to October of 1985, Iowa, Michigan. I would say the highlight of your career, but that maybe is put words in your mouth. Take us to that game, to your thoughts, and walk through that well for us.
Yeah, all right. Let's go to October of 85. Look, we were ranked number 1 in the country. It was a big game back then, as opposed to the amount of sports you can see now on television or your device, whatever screen you're watching your stuff on. It was one of only 1 or 2, maybe 3, if you were lucky on a Saturday, nationally televised games. We were ranked number 1. Michigan was number 2. I just remember the week being way different than the weeks leading up to it. And part of it was our ranking. Part of it was we were going to be on national TV. Part of it was going to be late afternoon into night game, which didn't happen really ever at Iowa. I remember the lights getting pulled up by Musco Lighting. It was a big deal. And it was one of those things that it's been talked about some for that game. I had tore my quad 5 weeks prior to that. I hadn't practiced since the Iowa State week, which was, I think, the 3rd week of the season. And I was dealing with an injury, which I know people are going to say kicker injury, not a big deal. But if you're a kicker, that's a really big deal because you're relying on your leg. And I wasn't practicing, but I was warming up in games and I'd re-tear it or aggravate it. So it was one of those, you had to get through that. I would call it the responsibility of doing your job. And I remember thinking, this is a big deal. And with guys like Chuck Long and Larry Station and Ronnie Harmon and Nate Creer and Jay Norvell, and you go through the roster, you're like, guys that brought it every day in practice, every weekend, and you're like, wow, I got a big responsibility here. I remember having conversations with Bill Happel and with Scott Helverson and Tim Sennett. They're like, "Yeah, it could come down to you." And I'm like, and this would be like on Wednesday or Thursday. I'm like, this isn't helping, guys. But at the same time, I also thought our offense was so prolific that we might boat race Michigan out of the game, because there were certain times during that season when we got it clicking with Chuck and the offense and the defense was playing the way they were playing. I want to say Michigan might have had the number 1 defense and we had number 2, but we had the number 1 offense in the Big Ten for sure. I thought it could be a runaway. The game starts and it's a flat out heavyweight title match, right? And yards were few, plays weren't big. And it was one of those games where, especially when you meet Ara Parseghian and Brent Musburger, guys that you watched on television when you were watching other games, and now they're interviewing you. And look, we were in Iowa where we didn't get a whole lot of national attention at that point. And it was a really big deal. But you want to approach it like it's not that big of a deal, right? So mentally, you had to figure out how to get into the game and just do what you've been trained to do and you prepared to do and you practice to do. everybody knows the game went back and forth. Scott Halverson got screwed out of a touchdown. And if they had replay like they do now, it would have been one replay and it would have been like a touchdown, which might have changed the whole complexity of the game, but it didn't.
Michigan is late in deploying their defenses. They seem to be confused.
Long looking at him under pressure, steps away from Akers, comes over to the right side, throws out it. Is it no catch in the back of the end zone?
And so it comes down to really a big stop that the defense made. Larry Station had a huge stop on Jamie Morris, the running back from Michigan. Harbaugh was a pain in the rear end the whole game. Still not a huge fan of his. Just going to say it, even if he ends to see this, because he was a whiny quarterback. That's back when the refs told the crowd to be quiet. That's not sports. I'm sorry. I'm hardcore that way. You want to talk about lame. But there were twice where the officials called timeout and trying to quiet the crowd down when they were down inside the red zone. Like, that just doesn't happen anymore. I will give Schembechler and Harbaugh credit for taking advantage of an opportunity in a rule the way the Big Ten was wimpily being refereed. And so I distinctly remember him scoring on this bad flip, just a makeup play that he had.
Harbaugh to put it up. Dross pursues him out of the pocket. He gets around, underhands it to White. White drives for the end zone. He's got the touchdown. What a move by Harbaugh.
We stopped them in the fourth quarter, towards the end of the fourth quarter. By the way, I had missed the last field goal that I had kicked and left it wide right. It wasn't a short one, but it was totally makeable, like 40, 42 yards, if I remember correctly.
Ball is down at the 34, and the kick is on its way, but it's going to be short. So Michigan's 1-point lead continues with 7:38.
And so you got a little of that play in your head, even though you don't want to play that tape ever. As Brian knows, you go right to the kicking net and you start working on, did I hit it right? I'm going to keep hitting it right, so I'm ready. And then the way we're driving the ball, when they thought we were going to run, we passed. When they thought we were going to pass, we ran. And there was really great play calling, not just by Hayden, but I think by Bill Schneider. There were all kinds of guys that made big plays in that drive. Some great catch by Happel and all that kind of stuff. We get it down, and I'm thinking we're going to score a touchdown. Like, we were moving the ball so quick. I'm like, dude, we're going to punch it in. This is going to be great. I'm going to kick an extra point. And then it was like, and this is like when you're a college player as opposed to like an adult, you look at the game and you're thinking, oh, we're going to score a touchdown. If you were watching the game, you're like, no, just get it close and kick the field goal and get the win, right? And that's exactly what Hayden did. And so anyways, it was a shorty. They ended up spotting the ball. It was a 29-yarder or so. And I'm thinking, yeah, let's just look, it's second down. Let's run Ronnie Harmon. Let's run some sort of quick comeback with a tight end drag, win the football game. They're like, no, we're going to call timeout because the clock keeps running down. And I'm like, oh, here it is. Anyhow, you guys know the story, but the way I was experiencing it was we call timeout. So I run out with and I set it up. And as I'm setting it up, as my routine was, I would pray over before I kicked it, get my mind and my body and really settle into a routine. And all of a sudden there's a tap on my shoulder and Mark Singler was like, hey dude, I don't think you're far enough back. Because I was 6 yards off. I was 6 yards off the line of scrimmage, which, as you well know, makes it easier to block the field goal. So I move it back a yard. We're still in the middle of the timeout. I start praying again. We line up, and I'm pretty sure that there's going to be another timeout call, but I'm not sure. And I'm like, you got to be ready, right? That's the conundrum of the opposing head coach. Do you call it or don't call it? And so Bo Schembechler called another timeout. And I was pretty cocky at Iowa. I was real confident in my ability, but I bordered on being really cocky. And I turned to the sideline and I gave Bo this kind of, hey, not a big deal, dude. It's not going to ice me, which was pretty ballsy. If I were to use that word, I think it was. I had gotten recruited by Michigan out of, do you want to kick or punt in college? And I said, both. If I can earn both jobs, we got to choose one. And I said, I thought it worked like you choose who's the best one at each position. And that was the end of the conversation. And I never heard from him again. So when Bo calls a timeout, I mean, I saw it as a personal affront. So I figured I'd give him a little bit of silent smack talk. Anyhow, timeout ends. We get set up. Great snap by Mark. Great hold by Mark Vlasic. And boom, it goes in. There's pictures of it. Looks like, I can't remember the name, even though I have the picture up on my wall behind me. Brad Cochran, that's who it is. It looked like in one of the pictures like he was close. But that's the fallacy sometimes of photography. Things can look really close and they weren't because he wasn't close. Our O-line, of course, did a great job. I honestly don't remember when I played at Iowa ever having a field goal blocked by anybody. Like we were tight and right on that stuff. It didn't happen. And so it went through, and then there's this massive pile up because everybody's going crazy, which they should have. We're celebrating, and Mark Vlasic and I are at the bottom of the pile. And I can't see anything. It's pitch dark because there's so many bodies. We're in black jerseys, right? And Vlasic, and his nickname, and probably still is Pickle. He's yelling. He's not yelling because he's excited. He's yelling because he's in pain. Because his knee's been contorted in the pileup. Which, by the way, we found out after the game, later that following week, that he tore his ACL in the pileup. So everybody's got to get off, and then we had a celebration. It was fantastic. It was the highlight of my career, but there's so much. You guys know this as you remember stuff when you're playing. It was a highlight for me, but I feel like it wasn't just the kick that won it. It was the way the team won the game.
It's down to 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds. Iowa calls timeout. It's all going to be on this field goal, and Rob Houghtlin, who has converted 3 so far, now has a chance to win this ball game. It's as simple as that. If there was a minute or 2 left, Ed, I'd bet on Iowa getting into the end zone with a touchdown. But 2nd down and 7 at the 16-yard line. It's going to be slightly an angled kick. And Houghtlin has practiced this a lot of times, but it's a lot different than before 66,000 people against the #1 defense in the country. 2 seconds on the clock.
Well, whichever way this goes, Jim, this was a great football game.
Tremendous football game.
A well-fought game. Both teams should be proud of the performance that they put in today. Both of them answered the bell, played like #1 and 2 in the country. And it all comes down to the very last play of the game. And what a great way for it to end.
Michigan 10 and Iowa 9. Vlasic will hold. And Rob Houghtlin will attempt to kick. All right, and now we're just about ready for football history, one way or the other. Just about ready for the play. The send ball is snapped. The kick is up, and it's long enough. And it's good! It's good! It's good! It's good! The Hawkeyes win! The Hawkeyes win! The Hawkeyes win! It's Iowa 11 and Michigan 10, and they're going wild out on the field, mobbing Rob Houghtlin. The Hawkeyes win! The Hawkeyes win! Unbelievable, Ed! That's tremendous! Listen to this crowd!
And beating Michigan was a huge deal because I remember the following 2 years playing at Iowa. Like Michigan week, at least at Iowa, was a big frickin' deal. Okay. Because if you beat Michigan, it spoke to not only to the conference, but to the entire country what kind of team Iowa had. And the following year, we were driving down to beat them. And unfortunately, we fumbled the ball. And then they beat us. Mike Gillette beat us with a field goal. And then the following year, I think they beat us by 12 or 11 or 12 points. But it was a big deal. And it was a lot of fun. I think we were talking before we started this. I think the preparation, the attitude, the approach, the mental toughness, the resilience, everything that I think football teaches even kickers and punters. If you're going to be successful and part of the team in that, I think you can rely on that preparation and that training to make you succeed when pressure's on. You still have to do your job. You see it all over sports where pressure can get to guys. I was fortunate enough that I think from a mental standpoint and a preparedness standpoint and people that coached me and showed me how to do stuff, I was able to rely on prep in that situation as opposed to letting, I guess, the pressure of the moment eke into between the ears and all that kind of stuff.
Definitely. I think that moment gives it more clarity too, right? You're like, all right, you're able to focus in on those parts where if it is a 20-yarder and the game isn't as big of stakes, it's a little easier to let your mind wander and not be as focused. I would assume, at least for me, like that.
Yeah.
Games where you're not fully plugged in, but it's like, okay, if this huge moment, you're like, all right, I'm laser focused, and your eyes are darts, and you're not thinking about much else than just being super focused and doing your job.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that because I distinctly remember the next 2 summers before going in when I would do my kicking in the summer and even in the spring. Most of the time, I would give myself mentally a situation. I'd say, okay, third quarter, we're down 9. If you make the field goal and then follow it up with a touchdown, you're going to win the game. This is an important 3 points. And I would do that before I would kick a practice ball to begin to mentally train myself that, to your point, every kick is an important kick, as opposed to, oh, this is just a chip shot.
And it's funny you say that, but it's almost like as kids, you're in the backyard, like, oh, there's 3 seconds left, and you set the stage, and you're like, you were in the stage, which is crazy,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, totally.
That's what every little kid in America has kind of set himself up to do at the end of the game. And so to have that opportunity to come and do that is amazing that way.
Yeah, it really was. I've been asked a lot about October of '85. You said it was a 45-yarder?
Like, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
It sounds like a good
29
little
yarder
challenge. Let's see if you can hit it. I think you should go line up and
Yeah.
You know, we're going to celebrate the '85 team the end of September. I might go out Friday afternoon when I get into town and see if I can actually pull it off.
let's get some video of that. I believe in you.
Yeah.
I do believe this. My mind believes I can make it.
That's amazing. Thank you for walking through that. I'm sure that moment's come up a lot in your lifetime, but yeah,
Yeah.
Great Hawkeye moment. I'm sure the whole state needed that at that point. And it was a fun memory to bring to a lot of people, I'm sure. So thanks for doing that.
Sure. Happy to do it. Reliving fond memories is a fun thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. Let's backtrack a bit and start back in Illinois. Get started in sports. Go there if you would for us.
Yeah, sure. So I was born and raised on the North Shore of Chicago. I was one of 6 kids, middle kid. I got involved in athletics really early, even before. So raised on the North Side of Chicago, but there was a period of about 2 years between, I think it was right after my first birthday and a little bit after my 3rd birthday. We lived in Princeton, New Jersey, and my dad put me on hockey skates and in a hockey league at 3 years old. He was a big sports fan. He went to Princeton and played basketball, actually played on the same team with Bill Bradley, who was a famous basketball player out of Princeton. So sports was something that he put his son into, right? And so it was a way for me to really pour myself into it. The North Shore of Chicago is one of the affluent sides of Chicago. We lived on what I always tell people, the wrong side of Green Bay Road. If you know the area at all, Green Bay Road is Sheridan Road. There's a tremendous amount of wind. The other side of it is more middle class. I'll just tell you how middle class we were. 6 kids, 2 bathrooms, 3 bedrooms. Okay. So it wasn't like it was the affluent living that is on the other side, and ended up going to a school called New Trier, which is known as a very good academic public high school. They had a lot of sports and a lot of sports success. I began at New Trier East. My first 2 years, it was East, and then it turned into Trier because they closed down New Trier West because of declining enrollment, and there weren't a lot of kids that were coming in. And so we combined 2 pretty good athletic high schools. But then you think about this, you got double the kids going out for the same sports. And so I was getting ready. And the way New Trier worked is you had 2 freshman teams. So I only made freshman B when I got into New Trier East. And we had 110 guys on the freshman B team. And like 85, 90 guys on the A team. And then you had sophomore. Then you had JV, where the guys that didn't play in varsity games. So you had 4 levels, and you have double the kids. And so instantly I realized in high school, like if you wanted to play football or any other sport, you were going to have to work your tail off. Number 1, to make the team. Number 2, to be on the field. And our coach was a guy by the name of Chick Chikowski. His first official name was really Eugene Chikowski. He played safety for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you want to talk about old school football coach. Like, we didn't get water during two-a-days in the middle of practice. That was for wimps, right? Like, you brought your cooler of water, but you couldn't get to your cooler of water until practice was over because they were teaching you mental toughness. It's just crazy. But we had a really good high school team my junior year, made it to the playoffs. I ended up I was the starting kicker and punter. And I got into kicking in a crazy way, guys. I picked it up in 8th grade because I was in a local sports store when that got Wilson Sports. And I picked up a Jan Stenerud kickoff tee. And with the kickoff team came a booklet that taught you how to kick. And I literally looked at that booklet and started to figure it out.
Yep. I had one of those too.
And by the way, it was the first soccer style kickoff tee. So it made sense. So if you ever kick soccer style, you always hit your toe, or you had to angle the tee so you didn't hit your toe on the tee because that hurt. With
Orange ones, yeah. The old orange ones were the straight on.
Yeah.
Probably the one Nick used.
Oh yeah, and then the red ones had the bigger wide open
Angle.
Yeah, and then they were offset.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
And they had a third post so the ball would stay on it with the offset.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
So
And it
I
came with
figured,
those little booklet. Yeah, like a 12-page booklet.
Yeah, and like
that.
It was drawings.
Yeah.
It wasn't pictures. It was like drawings. And they didn't tell you where to even hit it on your foot, for crying out loud.
Like 3 steps back, 2 over, and then swing your leg.
Yeah, exactly.
Close your eyes and kick.
Basically.
Kick. How many times have you heard it? Just kick it further. Kick it straighter. So anyhow, we had a good high school team. We were a very competitive conference. Junior year, we got into the playoffs, won the first game, lost the second game. But the reason I say that is that whole junior year, I think I kicked all extra points. We never attempted a field goal because we had a really good offense, and you also didn't trust the ability to execute in high school. And so you were like, hey, look, we'll go for it on 4th down and all that. And I punted. And so, anyhow, we had a good team. My senior year, we had a really good team. We were ranked in the top 10 in the state. And in Illinois, that's a pretty big deal with Chicago and some of the southern schools in southern Illinois. And our first game was against a team called Conant, which was on the west side of the suburbs of Chicago, and we lost in overtime. And like, we were supposed to be a big deal, but we ended up running the table from there on out to get to the state finals. And probably the highlight then is we were playing our rival that was 3 towns south of us, Evanston, where my dad went to high school. And it was a state semifinal game, and it came down to a 42-yarder that my best friend was our starting quarterback, Mike Bolin, who ended up playing defensive back at Iowa. We ended up winning on a 42-yard field goal to win the game. And it was one of those, oh my gosh, great. A whole heck of a lot of fun. We got beat pretty good by Revis in the state championship. I also played receiver and strong safety, and they figured out real quick, I think, in the game when they looked at the film, that Houghtlin, who was the strong safety, didn't run the alley very well. And they exposed not only sealing the end, but also making sure that they sealed the linebacker. And then if they figured I was coming up to make the tackle, it was going to be a 50-50 chance for me, and they liked the rod. So we ended up getting beat by, I think, 5 points in the state semifinal. It's been a long time now, but so anyways, finish that. I get recruited at Michigan. The Ohio State guys showed some interest, and then it shut off. And it was like February of my senior year, after football's over, my dad said, we got to figure out where you're going to school. Dude, he was actually pretty pissed off. But I was just going to figure it out.
You're a high school kid. That's why you're supposed to do it.
Yeah, I was clueless. So we jumped in the car, and he had set up meetings at the programs for the colleges that we were going to go tour in the admissions office. So we jumped in the car north of Chicago. We drove to Purdue, which I thought was a really cool school. I had no idea that I didn't have a snowball's chance in Hades to get, because academically I was pretty okay. So like barely a 3.0 student in high school, and in New Trier, that's good luck. I'm like, okay, we're going to Purdue. And the football guys were like, if you can get in, maybe you can walk on, because my dad had all the stats. He was all in. And then we drove from there to Miami of Ohio, Same situation. Indiana was hard to get into. Their football team was horrible. And I wasn't super interested. Same routine. Hey, if you get in, you can walk on. We'll see. So you get it 2 weeks, you can figure it out. Then I went to Miami, Ohio. Figured pretty quickly I can get in. Their football was and they were like, yeah, we'll give you a preferred walk-on spot. We'll even help you get in. And then I drove down over to Kentucky where my sister was in school. And that was a really cool thing. But Kentucky was like Northwestern bad. Or think Iowa bad in the late 70s. They were super excited. I could totally get in. And they were like, yeah, come to school here and do this. You walk on, we'll give you a preferred walk-on spot. But I didn't feel really great about it. I ended up going to Miami, Ohio. And as I mentioned, my quarterback in high school and my best friend, Mike Bolin, decided he was going to go to Iowa and he was going to walk on. Now, Mike was 5'7", probably 210 pounds, 205 pounds, solid, thick. He was going to go try to figure out how to play defensive back at Iowa. And I'm like, yeah, good for you, Mike. Good luck. Go do it. Out of the 11 guys that were call them the starting guys that I play with at New Trier, I want to say 9 of them got rides somewhere. Not all D1, but really good players. A couple tight ends, guys that went and played. Like it was like we had a really good team. So I walked down at Miami, Ohio, and it was a disaster. Like it was bad. I realized real quickly that I was better than the kicker they had, but it didn't matter. Because he was a junior getting ready to be a senior and he had the job and that you had to pay your dues. And the way Tim Rose, their head coach, ran things, I knew by the time I got through, I don't know, the first 5 weeks, I'm like, I got to figure out how to get out of here. Because I'm not going to be able to do this. And unlike today, it's not like you just drop your name in the transfer portal and everybody knows you're available. It was like, okay, I got to figure out where I'm going to school. The following weekend, my dad was coming down to visit and I told him, hey, I don't want to stay here. And he's like, if you want to transfer, feel free to transfer. I'm not saying you have to. And I didn't realize this, but I know this now, having put kids through college. Because I had mentioned maybe I'll go to school at Iowa with Mike. Iowa was like $3,500 a year. Miami was like 10. So the reason my old man wanted me to go to Iowa, he's like, look, you're saving me $6,500. I'm all in. But anyways, he comes down, we had this conversation, and he's going to watch the football game, and I'm going to shoot for the game because the one thing in Miami, Ohio, everybody stood up for the game. All of a sudden, I get to the stadium that morning, we were playing Cincinnati, and I get told, hey, you're kicking today. I'm like, what? Like, you're kicking today. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't have time to talk to there's no cell phones back then, guys. There's none of that, okay? And he doesn't realize it until I run out in the opening kickoff, and he's like, I'm wearing number 97. And as I'm running out there, your kids and the way they run. My old man was like, that's Rob. So I kick it through the end zone, and then never see the field the rest of the day because we get beat 35-0. And after the game, he's like, have you changed your mind? I'm like, did you not just watch this game? We just got smoked by Cincinnati, for crying out loud. I'm like, no, this is like the experience. So anyhow, I end up doing the paperwork, which is like back by mail then. Had to figure out, get an application sent, you transfer mid-year. One of the good things is Miami is a good academic institution, and I was pretty motivated to get out of there, so I got decent grades. We ended up jumping in the car like the 3rd week or 2nd week of January, and this is going to be 1984. And literally, we take Mike to school, not sure if I'm in or where I'm going to live. But it was a 3-hour drive from Chicago. And so it was like, yeah, we'll see. And if not, my dad's like, we'll get a hotel. We'll figure it out tomorrow. This is on a Sunday. Long story short, got a dorm, convinced the guys at Iowa to put me in Slater. But that was after I had gone to talk to Carl Jackson, who was the running back and the kicking coach. And said, I want to walk on. He saw my stats, saw a little bit of film. He's like, yeah, I guess we'll let you walk on. You can't get any equipment. We'll put you in gray sweats, and we'll see how it goes in spring ball. And I'll make it so you can at least be in the Slater dorm. So I ended up getting the Slater dorm and ended up rooming with Trey Jackson, who was a running back at the time. in one of the few dorm rooms at Slater that had a bathroom, which I thought was the coolest thing because everything else had to then. Walked on at Iowa, played in sweats. Back then, I don't know when you guys were playing, did they have the post-winter conditioning track meet where the offense against the defense with Coach Dervich? You guys remember that? Did you ever have that?
It was skills, competition, offense, defense, something like that.
Yeah, but this was like a track.
A lot of running drills, directionals. And all that.
It's like you did cone drills. It wasn't like a track, but it was.
200, 200, exactly.
100-yard dash, but you had like a 200.
Yeah,
you also had the mile.
Oh, really? Oh, God. We didn't have that. I think
mile
down
there,
the back was as fast as we got, which I was happy because that was about the extent of my running. I was like, anything more than that, I'm done.
And it was in I guess they called it the rec center for the rec building, which had the red track, which, by the way, in the 85 season, they condemned the roof of that building, and we ended up having to operate out of Kinnick for 5 weeks because they had structural issues. But I remember that distinctly because it was like you mark these moments in your life. I was chosen to run the mile, not because they thought I could do anything in the mile, but because I was a kicker and I was ineligible to play, by the way, for that fall. I think it was like, Derb was like, you're running a mile. We all know Derb. I love Derb. He taught me so much, but he can be a hard curmudgeon sometimes. Like, Houghtlin, you're running the mile. Winter conditioning taught me how to physically challenge myself, like no other conditioning I've ever done. And if the offense won the mile, offense won winter conditioning. And that was a big deal. But I'll never forget it. I end up going hard. I'm 2 laps in, and I've got a pretty good lead because nobody wanted to run the mile. Like, I looked at your face, Nick, and you said, the mile?
Yeah, no thanks.
Nobody wants to run. Football players don't want to run a mile. And there was probably a couple of linebackers in there might have been 2 in this because it could have been a punishment for being in it. You got to go run a mile. But I remember Tim, after the second lap, he ran over in the middle. He's like, dude, I think you can win this thing, but you aren't going to make a mile running as fast as you keep running. And I'm like, I don't know how to pace myself for another 2. I had no idea. Anyway, we ended up winning it. I ended up winning the mile. Offense won it. That was a really fun, cool thing. It didn't mean jack, but in the locker room it did, at least for the next week, if anything. And then Derv was the kind of guy who's like, hey, look, offense won winter conditioning and the skills thing, whatever it is. So they don't have to be at whatever early. They can be late, or they're first to training table and all that kind of stuff, which didn't matter to me on training table because I was a walk-on. I couldn't go to training table. Anyhow, I ended up having a city year. Didn't play that fall. They ended up going to the Freedom Bowl. Chuck had a crazy, might have been one of the best games of his career, and the team did as well. Beat Texas, 55 to 28 or something in the pouring rain. So this is the funny thing, and I forgot one key story in there. I never put pads on in the spring, and I would hold dummies. And this was back when Iowa didn't have cool practice gear, by the way. It was literally gray champion sweat.
Oh, that's pretty nice, though, to be said.
Look, they were good sweats, but they were basic gray champions. Ron to give me the pair of turned in because they're bad ponies. Like, you didn't get anything, which, okay, fine. And I get it. Like, I didn't care. I had sweats and I had ponies. I'm holding practice dummies if I'm not screwing around kicking half the time for scout team if someone's down and all that kind of stuff. I forgot to tell you this. That fall when I came back in 84, I was asked not to come to camp early because I'm not supposed to suit up. I'm not eligible, and I'm a walk-on, and I'm a kicker and a punter. So I have no standing. And I get it. I totally get it. But I got there late, didn't have to come when everybody came to camp. I came 3 days late. Camp gets done, 2 days, all that. And Coach Jackson said, hey, look, we got too many guys. And at that point, it might have been the year of or the year before where you could only have, I think, 120 total people. And I was probably the 121st or 22nd. And he's like, we're just going to let you go. And I was like, this isn't fun. Really disappointed. And I was ticked off because I feel like I had kicked well, even though I was in gray sweats and very rarely live. But I did kick sometimes for scout team in gray sweats versus first team defense. So I did do some of that. Larry Station, I do know this for sure. Larry Station almost knocked me out completely cold on one of those drills because I had nothing on. And he wasn't trying to. It was just one of those, just didn't ease up. So I got cut. And I was not happy about it. I still felt like I could play at Iowa. It was a numbers game.
The fall of '84.
Fall of '84.
Out as a transfer, even as a walk-on.
Yes.
Okay.
I get it. It's just a different world. Had a city year. And I think part of it was that may not have been the total rule, but it's not like you could go to the internet and find out what really the rule was and then go argue what this is what the rule is. You can do that. You didn't have access to information like that. And I just went with what people told me. And so I get cut.
At Miami, Ohio?
In Miami, Ohio.
Okay, so that probably counted then as a whole year? Wow.
One play.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I believe like a
One
retro
play.
team.
One play
Wow.
counts as a whole year. Then I sit a year because in theory you had 5 to play 4. Either way it worked out. I ended up playing technically in those 5 years. I played 3 of the 5 because I had a city year and played 1 season, 1 play. And so anyways, I had my schedule set up, guys, and you guys probably remember this. You have your schedule set up so you're free from 1 o'clock on. So you did all your classes in the morning, right? I had a lot of people say I hate 8 o'clock classes. I didn't have a choice. I'm trying to get my degree. It was like, all right, you take the class at 8 o'clock in the morning. That's what it is. You start class. So I had the whole afternoon free, but I was done by 1 o'clock. Practice typically didn't start till, if I remember correctly, like 2:30, 2:45. Special teams would go out. And so I would go into Kinnick and kick before the team came out and finish my kicking work because I stole balls. And I confiscated, like it wasn't hard to do, and found a bag and figured out how to do that. So I started working, and I did it to like, hey, I want to show you I can kick as coaches and players were coming in, and then I'd leave. Like literally hop the fence, which wasn't hard to get into Kinnick, and do that. 4th or 5th week of the season, I might be off on the timing, the intramural program had a field goal kicking contest. So I entered the contest for the field goal kicking contest, and you kick from the 20, no, it was the 15, 20, 30, 40. And you set it up left hash, middle, right hash, and you did all that. Literally off of my Jan Stenderer kicking tee that we talked about. Didn't miss. And you guys know this. If you're in a contest like that, you know what you're doing, and you put in the work and all that kind of stuff. There's no rush. You put it on a field goal tee, you better make most of them. So I win the field goal kicking contest, not because I made them all, but because you then had 3 kicks you could choose from anywhere for the max points. And I'm like, where are the max points? And they're like 50 yarders from the 40. Okay, let's go to the 40-yard line and hit all 3 of those and win it. And the Daily Iowan 3 days later has the results for winning the field goal kicking contest. And it ends up making its way to the football office, and guys are coming back from training table, and Tim Sennett at the time, who was a running back, who was coached by Carl Jackson, said, hey, Coach Jackson wants you to call him in the morning. I'm like, what for? I got no idea. He just said, hey, tell Houghtlin to call me tomorrow morning. So I called Carl up and said, hey, Coach Jackson, it's Rob Houghtlin calling. Tim Sennett told me to call you. He goes, hey, yeah, Rob. He goes, look, I saw your article in the paper. Maybe you need to come back. Why don't you come see me this afternoon? And so I got invited back to be in gray sweats for the rest of the fall.
What? That's crazy.
Who was kickers at the time? I'm trying to remember. 84.
84, you had Tommy Nickel,
He
who
was
was
still there?
very
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, Tommy Nickel had hit, was either at Michigan,
Yeah.
good. Tommy was accurate.
81 or, well, yeah, crazy.
I was encouraged because Tommy told me, he goes, look, dude, you can play here. Yeah, I went back. Basically, Coach Jackson said, hey, look, I think you got a chance. What you've done, let's see what you can do. Probably some guys got hurt, thinking back on it. Hey, we can squeeze you in. Didn't get training table. Would say to the scholarship guys, hey, because you guys remember that age. You can eat 6 meals a day. You're hungry all the time. But they would come back with styrofoam from Hillcrest because that's where training table was at the time. And they'd be like, hey, look, I got you some chocolate milk. I got you an extra steak. Here's some corn. Here's some whatever it is. And it was awesome. I got to Iowa at 165 pounds. By the time that spring of 85, I was up to 186 pounds. It was just one of those, maybe late bloomer physically, whatever it was. So it was awesome, and learn to work and lift and do all that kind of stuff. But then that next spring, so I win the starting job that next spring. So you had Mike Keenan, I think similarly my age, Gary Castrovallo punting as well. Mark, I got to think of his name. Gosh, that's so bad. I can't remember his last name. Another punter. So I earned a starting job.
The other kickers, do you remember?
You had Mike Keenan. There was one other guy, I can't remember who it was. I got to be honest, guys. At that point, when I knew the starting job was open, I became a complete introverted, singularly focused. This is the thing I'm going to go do. We had competitions. I ended up earning the starting punting job and the starting kicking job that spring. And it was really neck and neck, because Gary and I, Castrovallo and I were really close. And then, like, you knew you had made it when I got pulled in after the spring game, and I was told to go see Coach Fry, and he said, hey, we're going to put you on scholarship. And I was like, called my dad, and he's going crazy. He's going crazy because he's also going crazy getting that paying more money to go to college. So we love that. Hey, that was a big deal.
Not writing checks, yeah.
Not writing checks to University of Iowa. So then I'm getting ready to go crank it out. And then I hear through the grapevine, they've recruited the #1 kicker in the country, George Murphy, out of South Carolina. And George was good. I remember coming to camp and, hey, this guy's a freshman. He hasn't missed and all that kind of stuff. And we talked about this earlier in our conversation tonight, guys. It's one of those, okay, here's the next thing. Figure out how to beat the guy in front of you. Ended up beating him out, stayed the #1 kicker and punter. And then first week of the season, we played Drake. And I can remember distinctly, we were practicing on the Iowa baseball fields that day. And I remember hitting a ball and my leg going, what's that? And that was where I started to strain and then ultimately tear my quad in that season. It wasn't until post the Iowa State game. Look, we're ranked like 3rd or 4th or maybe 5th in the country at that point. We're winning games. We boat race Drake, Northern Illinois. We rip Iowa State. Like, all of a sudden, we're Chuck Long in the offense. Like, they're killing it. And it got to be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Looks like after the Iowa State game, you guys went to #1.
Was it after the Iowa State
Yeah,
game?
you guys blew them out 57-3. Then you went to Michigan State, or at home at Michigan State.
Yeah, Chuck Long with the reverse option, hold it in the air. Never practiced that play.
Yeah.
I'm guessing too, at that point of the program, it was commonplace to get those top recruits too, right? If they're doing that, like with the squad that they had, that was par for the course. The top guy at every position was probably at least on the board for them, right? Or at least a possibility.
I think it definitely was. And I think what the coaching staff at Iowa and what the players at Iowa were creating was a place that people wanted to go play. And they were good. And they were competing for Big Ten championships and bowl games. When you beat Texas in the Freedom Bowl, like, Texas is a storied program. And you take Iowa, which in 1978 was arguably had the record for the most consecutive losing seasons. Some statistic pretty close to that. Brian, you're probably looking at
close to 20.
And then Hayden comes in and, like, he changes it. Like, he changes the culture. Harvard ought to do a business study on how you flip losing into winning cultures. He also had a whole lot of advantages, i.e., the way football was played back then. New offense, found Chuck Long, diamond in the rough, highly recruited, but probably not nearly as highly recruited as it would be today with the amount of information available. And then to your point, Nick, I think there were a lot of guys that looked at Iowa and said, and then Bernie Wyatt went and tapped the East Coast, and then they also went down to Texas and were grabbing players that never would have considered Iowa before. And that, to your point, Nick, a lot of guys were like, yeah, I'll come play here. And then you had Kirk might have called them the big uglies. You had linemen from the Midwest, which were cherished physical people that were more than a little bit large and athletic, that were like, hey, I want to go play O-line at Iowa because they're having fun. They're winning. They're playing fun football, right? And so you think about putting a physical football team together, you had components of really high-skilled guys, to your point, that were going to come and air it out. And you had some really big dudes that were going to create protection and holes. And like our offense, when I was there, our offense put up points and yards, man. We ripped it. And we had a defense with Dan McCartney, Bernie Alvarez, Bobby Stoops as a GA, and a whole bunch of other. Bernie Wyatt was, I think he was coaching DNs. Linebackers was Bernie, and I'm trying to think who was DBs. It might have been one of Elliott's son. Anyways, long story short,
Say Bernie.
yeah, the time, and I think in Iowa football history where probably a really unique time where really top players wanted to come play there.
Bill Brazier.
Bill Brazier, thank you. Bill Brazier was DBs. Bill was the defense coordinator. Love Bill Brazier. What a great guy. Although all the defensive coaches hated kickers. At least I thought they hated kickers because they always yelled at us. As long as you did your job, like if you didn't shank a punt or you kicked it straight or you made a field goal, you were good. But if you missed, man, I'm telling you, I used to hate running by the defensive side of the sideline, man, because you got cussed.
Or don't ever hit a coach.
Yeah, I hit a coach in my days punting. Might have been the head coach.
We gotta hear that story.
As a walk-on, I'm in gray sweats. I punt a ball as we're in warm-up screwing around because Hayden used to come out early with the kickers, and he was way down, and I hit a rare, really good one, and it was going right at him. And I remember Tommy Nichols saying, "You need to yell heads up." And I was like, "No, I can't. That's Hayden Fry. It's the head coach. I can't." And it hits him back of the head. Hat comes off, and he looks around. And what do? You kind of look the other way.
You point to that guy?
And Tommy Nichols goes, "Oh, you got to go say something, or we're all in trouble." I'm like, "No, I'm not going to do that." And Tommy Nichols, he's a starting kicker. I'm like, all right. So I run down there, and Brian, I think you've heard this story. I run down, and I'm like, "All right, you got to own it." I run up to Coach Fry and said, "Coach Fry, I really apologize. I was the guy that kicked that, and I'm sorry I hit you." And he looked at me and he goes, "You kicked it?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "You're pretty accurate." He wasn't pissed. He had a good sense of humor about it. And I look back at it like 43 years later, and I think, wow, what a good leader. Didn't go off on a guy who didn't make a that wasn't like a mistake. He's out on the field. Pretty good chance you get hit by a football if you're a coach, right? And having coached high school football for 13 years when we lived in Michigan, I caught more than a few footballs on the side of the head or in the back, whatever. And usually it's the coach's fault, not the player's fault. But it's a story I remember because just the way he reacted, a great example of leadership of what's important, what's not important, right? And he was a phenomenal head coach. Personally, for me, a great supporter and encourager, kick in the pants or a pat on the back. And it was one of those moments like that.
I suppose it makes a difference what the punt was like too, right? If he was 15 yards out of bounds to the right, then he's probably like, "Oh, you're going to be in trouble." But if he's 65 yards down the field, you're like, "All right, you can kick all the
it was a good punt, which I still think punting is way harder than kicking because of the drop and all that. When people ask me what's harder, I'm like, I still think punting is harder than place kicking because the ball's moving. That's just my personal opinion. You guys might agree with me or not agree with me, but you screw the drop up and a whole lot can go wrong after that. So
I suppose, yeah. More chance for less consistency? Yeah, maybe.
Look, just having done both, I felt like getting the drop and the steps and the timing down on punting was way harder than once I figured out the place kicking. It's like, okay, eat it. And really refine it and get good at it. And punting was always like, you could feel like you're really in a, I feel like punting's like golf. When you're in a good groove, you feel like you can pound it. But when you're not in a good groove, you feel like you can't find the sweet spot. At least it was for me when I was punting.
I think weather was
Dip down,
more
pointed to 11
effective.
o'clock. And then all of a sudden you get a 35-mile-an-hour wind and your drops are short and you're short hitting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back to the tee. So I guess I can't remember. I saw you could see like in some of the pictures there was like the tape on the tee. So you put
Yeah.
the ball in the middle of the
It's funny because I had Mark Vlasic in 85 as my holder, and then Chuck for the next 2 years. Both of them were phenomenal holders. You see some of the Holiday Bowl game winner might be the best hold in Iowa football history.
I didn't
He's
realize
awesome.
that was Chuck Hartley.
It was Chuck Hartley.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Chuck's on the knee, snap is so high, he comes off both knee. I never realized this till I looked at pictures like after. Like he comes off the ground, catches it, and still gets it down.
Wow.
Never knew it. You're paying attention to that, but you're really not. You're concentrating. And I've got a picture somewhere in the house here of Chuck like literally off the ground, catching it. And I'm starting already at the ball.
Oh,
And you have to keep going. There's no turning back.
Yeah. How many times have you stopped, Ryan, and be like, no, you're not?
It's definitely over. You're just like, I hope he gets it.
We came to this last period of play. So, and here we are, high pass. The kick is away, and it is good. Oh, what a job Hartley did getting the ball down for Houghtlin.
Yeah. But I did it more so for that piece of the helping the holder put it where I would want it. And Mark and Chuck were money. You think about this too. In 86, Chuck was the backup quarterback. 87, he's our starting quarterback. I don't think you could convince a head coach in America right now to put your quarterback back as the holder, because now it's punters because you're working so closely.
One or two.
Did you have a quarterback holding for you, Brian?
yeah.
There's always a quarterback. They had rotated a few wide receivers in. I know Willie Guy practiced a little bit, and Anthony Dean, and a few other players here and there, but they had to have the ability to throw, I guess. That was always the caveat, but rarely do we use that.
We did it a lot in practice. We never did it in the game. Did you guys ever run a fake punt?
I ran one. By the time I got it,
down?
no, it was, I don't know if it got called back or whatever. I think they threw it back to me. I threw it to Tim Dwight, and I think by the time I got it and was like able to throw it, he had to come back to catch it. It was like he was that fast. He was down the field so far that I was like, I hucked it as far as I could, but he literally had to slow down and come back. And then, yeah, I think it got called. Somebody was offsides or something happened, I think. But
I remember in practice, you had so much time on your hand where you'd be throwing it around, all that kind of stuff, and kickers throw the ball a lot. I remember Hayden one point said, "You look to throw it pretty well. Why don't we? I want to see what you do on a fake." Same situation. We tried it one time, and they're like, "Yeah, no, did not work. Did not make it." And I think it might have been Mike Flagg was one of the upbacks, and he ran out, and I missed him. Yeah, no, we're not going to run a fake with you, dude.
And just one of those deals where you never do that. So it's a crapshoot anyway. If you're going to do this, you got to practice it 15, 20 times. You got to get someone comfortable to be in that position to be able to throw the ball.
There's a whole lot that goes on with that.
Did they not change the holder because I remember Hartlib was not the starter going into the season, so he took over mid-year, and they're just like, don't mess with the hold.
Yes.
Keep doing it as a starter.
I mean, we had a whole look. I was able to score a lot of extra points, and we were able to kick a lot of field goals because we had a really good offense. I think they didn't want to mess up the production of the unit and bring someone new in. There was a three-way competition in 87. It was Chuck Hartley, Tom Paholski, and Dan McGuire. And I want to say the first game that we played in the kickoff classic against Tennessee, they all got time.
Two of them for sure. Maybe all three.
And Chuck ended up, I don't think it was his fault. It was one of those, maybe we got scouted, but it might not have been Chuck. I don't know, whoever was playing quarterback at the time. That's not fair to Chuck. Whoever was playing quarterback at the time, we were running an option, got intercepted and ran back for a touchdown. Like, worst nightmare. Don't see that ever very often in football where you're getting ready and you pitch off the end and defensive back caught it and was gone.
I don't think I've ever seen that. That's impressive.
Yeah.
I'll dig up the clip for that one and put it in here.
You have to, because
I remember seeing that more recently.
I still think we were the better team. Tennessee beat us. They had Their quarterback was a big, tall dude who was a good quarterback. So he bought a lot of tickets and then rented a room after the game to celebrate and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, my wife, Michelle, comes. She's my fiance at the time. We're staying, and we're in New York, but we're staying out near the Meadowlands. And she comes to the hotels, hanging out, and all of a sudden, but her family's staying in New York. The Meadowlands is not like 5 minutes away from New York. And this is classic. You don't know anything when you're in college. Just dumb. I'm like, how do I get her back to New York? And oh, by the way, the cab ride's probably $60. I'm like, so I call Streefer and I said, Streefer, Michelle's here and I've got to figure out how to get her back to her parents at the hotel. Do you have any ideas? I don't even know where to start. Like, completely don't get it. And so he goes, yeah, meet me down in the lobby in 5 minutes. I'm like, okay. So I told Michelle, hey, we're going to go down. So we go down to the lobby. 5 minutes later, he's like, okay, stay right here. Hold on a second. He goes out of the lobby into the parking lot area and he waves at somebody. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. He's got a cab. Streefer's going to take care of me. This is awesome. How good is this? The team bus pulls up. So he said, here's how we'll get Michelle back. So he puts me and Michelle in a team bus with him, rides us into downtown Manhattan. I drop my wife out at a parents' hotel, and we drive back.
That's
John
awesome.
Streif was one of the first invites when we got married that following summer. Like, how class, like that I tell that story about John Streif, like that. Who is John Streif to you? I'm like, unbelievable friend.
There's 1,000 of those stories too.
Like, think about that in today's time, guys. So how'd you get back? We grabbed the team bus. Oh, it was crazy.
How does it even get downtown? I'm sure it navigates fine, but that's a big ass vehicle.
Literally, like we were in a car. The team bus was probably one of the charter bus drivers from the New York area, but still a coach bus that's supposed to have 55 guys on it is taking me, my fiance, and John Streif into downtown Manhattan and back.
That's awesome.
Because we didn't plan. And I remember saying, what can I, and Streif was like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal.
And he came with you, which is more impressive, right?
Yeah, he didn't just dump. He's like, no, I'm going to send us a wonderful wedding gift, sweet note. People say, what do you love about Iowa? First thing I say about Iowa is the people. And Streif is just one of hundreds of examples you could give of showing up like that. Or I tore my quad my first year, my groin my second year, and the amount of times that he got me ready to play a game, TENS units, whirlpools. Hey, I ran out of the anti-inflammatory, and Streif would show up at your dorm room at 11 o'clock at night with a refill and say, here you go, see ya. And I was one of a lot of guys that he did that for. And it's funny, the guy who ended up setting me up with my wife ended up becoming a head basketball coach at University of Alabama, at Murray State, at NC State. And when he got his first head coaching job at Murray State, he won a national championship as an assistant at UCLA. Mark Gottfried's his name. He asked me, he goes, if you were putting a staff together, I'm like probably 30, 32 years old. He goes, what would you do? I said, I would find a John Streif. And he goes, I have no idea what that means. I go, you need the glue to your program. You need a guy who's the glue in your program. Because I remember hearing stories from everybody, from watching him when Mike Boland blew his knee out our senior year against Northern Illinois. He'd been working his can off as a walk-on. He finally earns a ride. In his first play, he blows his ACL out. And that whole fall, you'd have thought Mike Boland was the starter. By the way, John Streif showed up for him. And 100 other guys that I played with.
And the basketball team and whatever other teams he was covering too.
And I haven't talked to him in forever, but I hope he's still well. You got to have people like that in your program. It'll make the difference between being okay and being pretty phenomenal and creating culture that creates real wins for the program.
And the consistency of those people being there for 40, 30, 45 years or 40 years. It's a lot.
Yeah.
We had guys say Like he kept them at Iowa. Like if it wasn't for Streif, they would have left. And he talked them out of a bad time or struggling with injuries or recovery. And it was him being there all the time. And we just talked to Sean Gillen, and it was almost died when Streif showed up every day, dropped off a paper, didn't even talk to him, often just talked to his mom. That you always remember that just because he was always there for everybody, whether you asked for, and probably no one really asked for the help, but he just knew that he was needed and he showed up. And yeah, it's incredible.
I feel like John operated like in a different universe. His days weren't 24 hours. He had 48 hours to use in a 24-hour day because he'd be all over the place and always be there early in the training room when guys needed therapy and help. He'd be on the sideline. He's moving stuff around. He managed travel. I don't know how he did it. I remember when talking about players leaving, Peter Marciano, I guess it was my 5th year. Maybe it was my senior year, and I remember Peter being pretty discouraged. He was from New Jersey. And he and Joe Mott, some other guys were New Jersey guys, and I think he was really homesick. This is the memory that I have. Maybe it's not completely accurate, but I think it was a similar conversation you were talking about, Brian, where Streifert talked, just stay in it. You're going to get an opportunity. Just stay in it. And he got his opportunity and had a whole heck of a lot of fun with it. Obviously a phenomenal athlete. Not quite Tim Dwight, but back when I was playing, looked like that kind of crazy athletic gift, and he stuck it out. Remember, guys, I'm remembering stuff I haven't talked about. And
That's great. Yeah, I think just like, for instance, my youngest brother, John, had his appendix out. And same thing. He was calling my mom, updating her, and all that stuff. So I think he lives near my parents now up in Manchester, Iowa, which is cool to see. It's one of those things you'll see him out at the fish fry or whatever.
Yeah, and it's funny. Every time I had seen John, because I would go back and do kicking camps, or I'd see him when they would come, because we lived in Michigan for 27 years. So I'd get to either the Michigan or the Michigan State game. And then I would make basketball games at both places too, because Ann Arbor was an hour from where I lived and East Lansing was an hour and a half. He never aged either. Like he's drinking from the fountain of youth. He just looked the same when I was in college. Every time I saw him, even if it was 15, 20, 25 years later. Pretty crazy. I don't know. Maybe he's aged a little bit now, but oh yeah. I would come back for kicking camps and see John at kicking camps, or when Iowa would come to play Michigan or Michigan State, because they were very close to where I lived, hour and a half, either for football games or basketball games, knowing to be with them, and that John looked like he hadn't aged a day since when he was at Iowa. Just crazy, same demeanor, same great memory, asked about Michelle, asked about our kids, just still plugged in. And I kept thinking, I just think about the amount of athletes that he worked with. I don't know how he did it. I think he operated in an alternate universe. He had 48 hours in every day to work out like the rest of us, and was like, maybe there were 3 of them. I don't know.
That would explain things.
Yeah.
Feels like it, just to keep all those details set from one squad to another, one team from the other. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, a couple other game-winning kicks. Anything interesting about those kicks besides the high snap on the Holiday Bowl?
I think the Minnesota one was one of those. I still think I made the first one, even though it never officially counted because there was 12 guys on the field, so the play didn't count. I feel like I hit it over especially when you were in the Metrodome. But they had 12 guys on the field, and then it was like, oh, okay.
So they ruled it They ruled it no good from 51.
And I'm just telling you right now, it was inside the right upright.
It's like, we know when it's good or not. We've seen it. 10,000 kicks. Like,
you know. And that was back when the college posts weren't as high, so you could hit it over that. And it's no good. And I'm like, oh my, and I'm walking up. And by the way, easiest pressure situation as a kicker, because at that point it was a tie game. So you're not losing the game. So your fear of failure, you're not thinking like, I lost the game. 12 guys on the field. And that's a 15-yard penalty. Like 51-37 is a completely different kick.
51-yard attempt with Chuck Hartley to hold for Rob Houghtlin trying to win it.
There's plenty of distance.
No good. No good. Rob Houghtlin misses for 51 yards. We're still tied with 27 all with 5 seconds left.
Have 12 men on the defense, 15-yard penalty, automatic first down.
What a backbreaker for Minnesota. With the score tied 27 all with 5 seconds left, Rob Houghtlin will try it again.
Unreal.
A 36-yard attempt. This time it is good. 1 second left and Iowa has taken the lead. Incredible.
1 second left.
And I remember just the craziness. And I learned after, it was funny because that in 85 after the Michigan game, also had what ended up being a game winner against Purdue in the sloppiest conditions I ever played in. And from that point, after the pileup, I learned real quick that after you hit one, because I was lucky enough to hit, I guess, technically 4, even though Purdue wasn't at the very end of the game, but pretty close to the end of the game. So don't rush the field on me. Because I didn't like, because look, I was not even close to a reasonably sized guy on the team. And I didn't want to get destroyed. But that one was, I will say this about the 85 season. My dad used to say it. He passed 7, 8 years ago. He said, I just remember the 1985 season when we'd pack to go to games. He never didn't pack his rain gear, his golf rain gear for a game. I want to say that from Northern Illinois on, every single game except for the bowl game afterwards, it rained. And as a kicker,
You're right.
that sucks.
Yeah.
Because you're kicking wet balls the whole time. And you have
Turf.
But even on turf, I didn't tell you this story in the Iowa State game that year. It's 95 and crazy hot. We go into that weird locker room they had at the end of the field. It pours rain on that aluminum roof. I mean, it's pouring rain. Opening kickoff. I go up to it. I plant, slide, almost miss the ball, barely goes 11 yards. Not supposed to do that. We recover. My dad's in his stand. He's like, what the heck happened? And I get asked on the sideline, did you try to do that? I'm like, did it look like I tried to do that? And then all of a sudden, the defensive coaches yell at the equipment guys, get the grippers out. Yeah. I mean, it was like I went down. You look at the film, like I go down. And if you think I was that good at faking an onside, you'd have to practice that days upon days to make it look like. And if you could get away with it, it'd be a great way to do an onside kick. But I'm just glad we recovered it. Because everybody had turned to run, and we had a good coverage unit, and we got it back. So I went to grippers right away.
And to be ballsy enough to try it yourself too, right? It's like
opening kickoff.
I'm just going to see what happens here.
Opening kickoff. Like our defense was good, but
yeah, start the game out up or down note. Yeah, I guess one way to.
I'm going to call it audible as a kicker. Let's see how this goes.
Look, I did that once in my football career when I was a junior in high school. When I thought a fake punt was open, I got a gnarly snap, and I thought I saw a gap, and I got destroyed. I got maybe -3 yards. And the clipboard shattered over my helmet by Chick Chikowski. I was the obedient. You tell me what to do. I was not ever going to. That's why I couldn't play quarterback probably either. I wouldn't have been very good at the audible. That's the other thing that impressed me about Iowa when I was there. I tell people this story all the time. In my current role, like preparation is key. I don't know if they did this when you guys were playing, but I remember on Saturday mornings before you go to the game, we'd have the team meal, and then Bill Schneider would have the quarterbacks, all of the quarterbacks, typically it was 3 of them, and they would go through plays, not on a board, but hey, we're running, here's the call, what are your options? And I remember being like, I still to this day, it's why I tell my team this, they very rarely do those guys get something wrong. Ever. Like, I can't imagine the prep for a game that a quarterback goes through. What's the check with me on this? And it wasn't like it was 5 minutes. It was a solid 20 minutes going through it. And that's just the way Bill Schneider was, at least for when I was there. I don't know if you experienced that, Brian or Nick.
We didn't have Bill, but they did something similar. They would go around and everyone got a couple questions before the game.
Yeah, they had tests beforehand, and they really would pick some on a random out of 40 plays or whatever it was, and they'd be like, yeah, what's X doing this play? And yeah, so there was that sort of integrity check at that point of you know your shit or not.
Yeah. And look, it's funny because I think about it now, and I think that's how serious it is, or that's how important it is, or that's the expected responsibility. I just have mad respect for the rigor and accountability to the entire team as a teammate that you had to the rest of the team. And the coaches did not shy away from the rigor and accountability, checking to make sure people knew what they were doing and ready to go play.
Yeah, I think that gets lost a little bit sometimes of the people that are really good, the amount of work they do on the side, the film and the study and the kind of education part of it.
Yeah.
People just like, oh, they show up and they do these things. Matt Sherman was my roommate. He'd show up 2 hours later than everyone else because he was deep in film study and doing those things.
I remember the packets, like every week the packets they would get. And I would remember the quarterback packet and the running back packet. And there were probably minor changes at times. And then I remember my last year, because I spent a bunch of time, was engaged. I remember watching the GAs cutting film and going through film, and I was like, dang, this is serious business. Probably at that point realized I didn't really want to coach. Because the hours, the first 4 years, and the amount of work put, like the prep, people don't understand. My son-in-law, my youngest son-in-law, married to my youngest daughter, his dad was a Lions coach for 27 years. And he still talks about when his dad was coaching with the Lions, that once the season began, it was like maybe one night, maybe 2 nights a week that he'd be home, because otherwise he was at the facility 24/7. Like, I don't think, if you haven't been in it, the average fan has got no idea the amount of prep work that goes in.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I didn't get into coaching, because I was like, our coach would see his kids as much as we did. It was like they'd go up to practice here and there for an hour or two. One of my high school buddies was like talking shit to me one day, and he's like, I think I was older probably to pull this off, but he's like, I dare you to go down and get it after the whistle penalty. And he's like, oh, you won't do it, you won't do it. And so I think we were ahead by 20 points or something. So I punt and I go down, and that's clearly after whistle. I just level some dude. I just guy standing there, and I just literally, boom, just, I was bored too, because I was always like, kind of came from playing and like to hit, and so I just, you know what, I'm gonna do something stupid. So I knocked the guy out. Coach Fry comes over and is like, hey, what are you doing? I'm just like, okay. Luckily, he didn't dwell on it. We just kind of like, what was that about?
Did you get called out in film sessions afterwards, though?
No, yeah, just came and went. No one really said much about it. So it was, I don't know if they just knew that was an outlet because I'd been hammering them to play. And they're just like, okay, we're gonna let that go at the moment. So yeah, I got the penalty and whatever else. But yeah, my friend was like, oh man, I can't believe you did that. But funny story for him, at least.
That is funny. Brian, did you ever get a penalty?
No.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I barely got my jersey.
Dirty.
A couple times I think I almost had to make a tackle. But luckily, I don't think I had any kickoffs returned. And then I think as I got stronger, I could get in the end zone more consistently. So we just went middle deep all the time.
Yeah. I wanted to go deep all the time. Coach Fry always wanted to pin him inside the 20, which I was like, let's just pound it. Make him go 80 rather than try to make him go 84. But yeah, I had one tackle in college. The story as I remember, but I don't think it's true because I think Keith Byers was gone, but it was against Ohio State in 87. It was the opening kickoff. And it was me or him. And he was on the sideline, and I tackled him, and he destroyed my right shoulder. But I dislocated my right shoulder. So I come back to the sideline, my arm won't work. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Ed Crowley pops it back in, and he says, how's it feel? I go, I literally can't feel my arm. And he goes, just tuck it in your waist when you go kick them. And I'm like, okay, so I did. And we got beat pretty good by Ohio State. But the year after I left Iowa, I had to go back and have 8.5 hours of surgery to reconstruct my right shoulder, because after that game, I had dislocated it over the next year and a half, conservatively 15, 18 times. Like, I'd be playing pickup basketball and go for a layup, and a guy would follow me and it would come out. Like the dude from Ohio State ruined me. That's why I could never have played any position but kicker or punter in college, because one tackle.
He's a pretty big guy, though, no?
Yeah.
He was a house, wasn't
I had no business trying to head to the side, wrap up.
he? That's instinct, though, right? You're like high school, you're just going back to those days of like, oh, I got to get this guy. And you're like, wait, that was not a great idea.
I'll tell people when they watch a college game or a pro game, like you have no idea about what's going on in these collisions. You have no idea what it feels like getting hit. Like you said, I got trucked by him. Yeah, I tackled him. Got out of bounds. I guess I get the tackle. But like you're talking about a 245-pound, 6'3" beast and a 6', 187-pound kicker. He won.
Yeah, I can see that. Let you
8.5 hours of surgery. I went and did back when they had the bad, they didn't even have MRIs back then. And they're like, it'll be a 3-hour surgery. We're just going to tighten everything back up. 22 screws in the front, 14 in the joint to put the thing back together. I still don't have great range of motion. Doc Albright was the guy who did it, but it hadn't bothered me since. One tackle.
That's when you go really low.
Yeah, like ankles, like shoelaces.
Yeah, like you're just grabbing around his ankle for sure.
Just typical kicker tackle.
That's a lot of thigh that you're messing around with there.
86 was at home. 87 was the Marv Cook game where he scored at Ohio State.
Oh.
So 86 was at home and you guys lost pretty bad. Yeah.
Because Marv Cook, that's right. And I broke the extra point record at Ohio State that day.
Nice.
Didn't stay up. Records are made to be broke. Nate blew everything up. And we shouldn't have won. Fourth and 18?
Something like that, yeah.
Marv gets
Fourth
it
and
in.
20.
More than that.
That was another classic Iowa moment. Right? That was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Earl Bruce got fired after that game. Like we made that joke. Yeah, we got Earl Bruce fired. We had no business winning that game at the end. That was a little bit like the Indiana Pacers and a couple of the games they had in this playoffs this year, but pretty impressive. Chuck, I think it was that? Yeah, that was Vlasic to Marv.
Hartlib.
Was it Hurley?
Yep. Hey, speaking of kicking records, you had the longest field goal record for a long time in the Rose Bowl.
52 in a Rose Bowl.
52.
And the guy from Georgia here, Rodrigo, he blew it like that. That one had a chance to stand for a long time.
But you had a school record as well?
55, but I don't even know who beat that. Maybe it was Nate or someone else. Or you.
No, I didn't ever kick that one. The game-winning one against Pittsburgh, 2016. It was a kid from Solon.
Yeah.
I'm going to rack my brain on that. But he had a game-winning 57-yarder. What do you think your 55 was at?
Iowa State, 87. That was a September day. Wind was blowing at that end, and it was one of those, you guys know that feeling like, if I just get it up, it's going. I tried two 60-plus yarders that were long enough but left at Illinois, 86 or 87, I forget, and we lost that game at Illinois. Never should have lost that game.
I think I tried two 58s. One I missed wide, and then the other one I fell short on.
I tried a 72-yarder in 85.
Really? 72. Halftime of
against Northern Illinois, and Hayden's, hey, why not? If you make it, you're going to blow up the college record now. 72? Which I didn't care. I was a kicker. Yeah, I'll try a bomb. Why not?
Sounds fun. Yeah.
72 yards. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm going to have to hit this really hard. But the Illinois game was one of those games. I think it was either late October, early November. It was a warm, late fall day, which you didn't get, and crazy wind, which is what you would get. And so it was at the north end zone at Illinois, and like wind was out of the side. It was like bombing wind. And in pre-games, I was hitting. You felt like you could hit it from anywhere.
Yeah.
But missed them both. And probably never would have tried it if it didn't have the rule. I think from that standpoint, you're kicking it from somewhere around the 49-yard line or so. Nowadays, you'd never do that given that kind of field position up. Hey, it's just like punting it out of bounds at the 20.
That's why that NFL rule took a long time, or that NFL distance record took a long time to break, because it's such a penalty if you miss it. And the only time you get that opportunity with that distance would be like end of half. And so the odds of someone even getting an attempt like that is rare.
Yeah.
And then you'd have to hit it perfect from that distance. So
Yep.
that's a reason there it took a long time for that to break. But now it's, I don't even know what it's at, 65, 66 now. NFL record.
Yeah,
It's
Tony
crazy.
Franklin for forever had it, I believe, in the NFL. To your point,
They can all hit 70 probably.
I agree. You got guys hitting game-winning 60-yard field goals.
Yeah.
And if you've ever picked, that's a bomb. And they make it look like it's just a solid ball.
Yeah, we were talking with Nate and we were just like, the guys today, it's just unreal how good they are.
They've gotten so much better. I don't know what they're doing, how they're doing it, but they're doing it. It's not just the Justin Tucker type kicker. You get like the kid Brad Fox at Detroit. He hit a 62-yarder in the UFL before Detroit signed him, and then he hit a couple like 60-yarders.
Gosh.
And they don't even look like they're like. I know that when I was trying to you had to hit those really hard and perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, the trajectories were different, right? Your ball would fly flatter arc, right? Yeah, they definitely do it. You're ripping a 60 that looks like it's a 45 easily.
Yeah. And look, 45 wasn't short, but like as long as there's not crazy wind, I can make a 45-yarder was not a huge ask. And that's why I say to people, guys, the NFL guys now, if it's a 50-yarder, people are like, oh, it's a long kick. I'm like, for these guys, it's not a long kick.
It's almost get penalized for missing anything under 55 now. It's crazy. Okay,
Yeah,
I did look it up. It was
Okay.
Tom Nickel had 56.
Oh.
And then I don't know what your other one, your longest would have been. Yeah, it said a 55 maybe. Then Tim Douglas had a 58.
Oh.
And then I'll have to look up the other 58 in there, but I think they have two tied at 58 now.
Okay. All I know is I had the Iowa scoring record for a little bit, but I only played 3 seasons. Nate had 4. I always tease him on that.
Average per year, you can win that one.
But then Nate would say, you had a much better offense than I had. How many extra points? What was the ratio of extra points to field goals? Because I had games, gosh, I bet I had a couple games where it was 8 to 10 extra points.
Yeah.
Oh, I can imagine, yeah.
That might even be broken too.
Especially as that if it was an easier preseason schedule, like usually, I'm sure those.
Yeah, Drake
Drake, Northern Illinois, and by the way, Iowa State back then was not good.
Yeah, and Northwestern.
Northwestern was
really
bad. 1 year they were okay. We had a tight game with them, 17-14. But yeah, I mean, the 1 year we beat Illinois, what was it 56-0? It's all extra points. I think we scored 3 touchdowns in the first quarter. Like 21 shake before it even got started. I think they had
like the opposite of what we went through sometimes. We went through a couple of those on the opposite side of that.
Yeah, we never really got Ohio State in 86 was a game where I feel like we got smoked pretty good. I never felt like we were in it. Chris Carter made a catch in that game where I remember sitting on the sideline. I think it was Castro was the punter at the time, and I'm like, this is gonna be a long day, dude. I'm just telling you right now, we don't have a chance. This guy's like nobody we had ever played against. Like that, he went up like elevator up on a comeback route. I was on the sideline. I backed up because I thought I was going to catch it on the sideline, like shoulder high. And he went up after it like he was getting on an elevator, and it was nothing. And he had hands like 3 times the size of any normal hand. I was like, oh, yeah, it's going to be a long day. Garden.
I can imagine. Yeah, it is cool to see that kind of athleticism up close like that. Just freaks.
Yeah. Like we've all seen those guys somewhere along the line. I have mad respect for that. And look, I always got a bunch of guys like that too. I have mad respect for it. I really do. I think they're different human being types. The other thing I say, I think people that play the game that have a different sort of chromosomal makeup that from a musculature, skeletal, and ligature standpoint, like they can handle abuse like I've never, like people don't, yeah, I say this in a really positive way, they're freaks. Like they're really special physical people.
Yeah, every generation you see these guys just get bigger and faster. Just the 60s, you go back to the 60s, look at the roster and the player sizes, it's almost laughable. Like They wouldn't make a high school team now at that size.
Yeah.
And they were playing starting linemen on the Iowa team. And so every 10 years, you see this leap forward of the size and speed and athleticism of the guys. It's wild.
Yeah, didn't Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones play at Arkansas together?
Mhm.
And you look at their body types, weren't
Right.
they both linemen?
I think so.
Yeah.
Sounds right.
Like, there are kickers bigger than those guys.
Oh, yeah. There's some athletic kickers, too. Actually, I did ChatGPT, asked longest field goals at Iowa. All right,
Okay.
so Tim Douglas, 58 yards, 1998. Marshall Cohn was the Pittsburgh
Oh, yeah.
kicker, 57 yards, game winning.
Yeah.
Tom Nickel was 83 at Michigan, 56 yards. Then you were 87, Iowa State, 55 yards.
Yeah.
And Nate also had a 55-yarder twice, actually. He had two 55-yarders. And then I had a 54, and Drew Stevens had a 54 twice. And then some other 53s. So
It's a pretty
wanna
good
get that
kicking
correct.
roster there across the board, isn't it?
not too bad. A couple of pretty good kickers there.
Nick, what was your longest punt at Iowa?
Ooh, 75-ish maybe?
Wow.
Couple
Was it
of
a
Yes.
bomb or was it like hit and nobody covered it right? Gotta be honest.
I think it would get to about 60-ish, 65-ish, and then it'd get over their head and then it'd roll another 10.
Okay.
I think. I mean, it was a decent hit. It
Yeah,
got
yeah.
out quick from what I remember, but I don't know. I know there's at least a 69.
All right. 82 is Ryan Donahue.
Okay.
And then Jason Baker had a 79 and a 76. Ryan
Ooh.
Donahue had another 76. And then Nick hit 75 yards against Indiana.
Yeah, man.
And Jason Baker had another 74. And Niall Kinnick had a 73. And Nick had another 73.
You know what's crazy?
That's wild.
Is Reggie was none of those?
No, he just hit it 60 yards straight up in the air.
Gosh. I saw him practice only probably a half a dozen times, and I was like, I couldn't believe how high he hit it.
And just extension up, no like forward momentum either. He almost was like here, I'm gonna just kick it straight out of my hand, straight up in the air.
It was like a mechanical golf machine, like just bang. But when he hit it, man, I remember because he had graduated by the time I had gotten to Iowa. He came back for spring practice and was doing some workouts because I think he was at Miami at the time. I may not have that totally right, but he was kicking it to some of the Iowa receivers. And I remember Bill Brazier because he coached the return guys. And if you can catch his punt, you can catch anybody's punt. I remember the legend of Reggie is he could stand at the base of Kinnick before they redid the north end zone and kick it over the north end zone stands. I don't know if you guys could do that.
Yeah.
We had the bubble later on, and that was our goal, is try to kick it over the bubble, because that was quite an accomplishment.
Yeah.
I think, Nick, you got that over there once. I don't think I ever got it over.
That was hard though, that getting over the bubble.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just always imagining someone walking past the stadium at that point, having a
And a
football,
ball comes out.
launching them in the head. You're like, oh God.
Hopefully it wasn't Coach Fry.
Yeah.
Can you fill us in on your NFL and arena experience, and then maybe update us on what you're doing now, and we can wrap it up here.
So I didn't get drafted. Went to the combine. Had a good combine. I would say the guys that I was competing, there was a guy from Miami of Florida, a guy from Southeast Louisiana. 5 of us got invited. Chip Lowmiller from Minnesota did. Myself, I can't think of the guy's name from Miami.
Puerta, was he already gone, or?
He was gone. No, it was
Okay.
I don't know who it was. We did the physicals with a bunch of teams, and then we did the kicking. Part of it, the big thing you had to do, they wanted to see how you kicked it because we were all coming off, you were kicking off a tee, so they want to see how you kick off the ground, which I spent a month in January and part of February figuring that out. I had gone to a half-inch block, but I think I was probably somewhere between 80 and 85%. Anyways, didn't get drafted. Free agent at the Atlanta Falcons. Jeff Ward, who was an All-American out of Texas. Greg Davis, who was the strike kicker. It was the season after the strike. And another kid from Northeast Louisiana. And I got cut 2.5 weeks in. Did not have a good camp. Didn't hit it great. Kicked off well, but struggled a little bit. didn't matter. Camp wasn't nearly as long before you got into preseason. And the reason why is because Greg Davis had kicked for them in the strike year. So basically they knew what they got. And so, I mean, it was a paltry signing bonus. And I was like, oh my gosh. Then I get cut. We were living in Knoxville before we had moved to Nashville at the time. I was newly married, a couple months married. I caddied at a country club in Chicago called Bobolink, which is an all-men's club where Mike Ditka was the coach when I was in college. I got to know Coach Ditka. So I called him and he said, yeah, I'll bring you into camp that following spring for mini camp. They gave me a little bit of money, went in. Kevin Butler was the starting kicker, and Ditka told me the first day when I got there, he's like, I'll just tell you right now, you're not going to beat out Kevin Butler, but I'll give you a chance to make the squad so you can get looked at in preseason. You're good enough to make the squad and be the backup guy. I'll give you a chance so other people can see you. I'm like, love it. Second day there, I hit in team drill. I hit like a 45-yarder, hit it good, and Butler's like, yeah, you're pretty good, kid. I remember you at Iowa. I line up for the next one, dead straight down the middle, lands at the goal line. And my right hip is on fire. Something had happened and literally couldn't. So I go to Lake Forest Hospital to where the orthopedics guy were, and he's like, yeah, you tore 3 ligaments that connect your hip bone into your pelvis. And I'm like, oh, well, that sucks.
Is this the same leg that you injured?
I tore a quad, tore a groin.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh. So he's like, look, 3-4 weeks, you should be fine. You didn't tear it all the way through. It's going to heal back fine. You're going to be fine. And then I can't think of the guy who started arena ball. He was an Iowa guy, Jim Foster. I got a call. My agent at the time was a guy, Robert Fraley was his name. And the only reason you would know that name because he was also Payne Stewart's agent. Jim Foster called Robert Fraley and said, hey, if he wants to play an arena ball this summer, I'll automatically have him come play. I'm like, cool, great opportunity. It's going to be on ESPN. It's this crazy sport. You're playing it in an ice arena / basketball arena. I'll go do it. I didn't realize this. The goalpost for arena ball, you can double check this. It was like you were trying to hit it through a bedroom door.
I think it's
Like,
9
it was so
feet.
narrow. 9 feet. And so I'm like, all right. And so you figure out how to do it. And like, you can hit it from anywhere. You think about it, the field was 50 yards long. So you're basically in field goal range the minute you get there. I'm like, this could be a whole heck of a lot
I
of
think
fun.
the longest you can hit is a 62 or 63 if you're on the back of the end zone, if you have enough room in that arena to back up far enough to take your leg swing.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure I didn't make a single field goal in games. I'm 100% sure that my first 6 paychecks bounced in arena ball. Oh, by the way, we were on the road the whole time because I was playing for the Chicago Bruisers. Like the first 3 weeks, we were in Sacramento playing like 2 other teams because I think there was like a Sacramento team and a Seattle. Like they played it all there. First game I played in, they had a bench clearing brawl and they called the game in the middle of the second half. And anyways, I got done with arena ball. It was a lot of fun. It was hard because those goalposts are narrow. And that's when I was like, what? Am I going to try to be like a Nick Lowry at the time where he was a guy who went to 7 clubs and finally made it with the Kansas City Chiefs? Or am I going to, like, how long am I going to chase this thing? You think about it physically, tore the quad, tore the groin, blew up the hip. I was feeling good, but it was like, I'm married now a little over a year. What am I going to do with my life? Like, I got to go get a real job, figure out how to have a career.
That pays with a paycheck that doesn't bounce.
You'd get paid like $750 if you lost and $1,500 if you won. None of the paychecks cleared. I'd call my wife at home because she was living with her folks at the time. She'd be like, yeah, the check you sent, it bounced. And it kept bouncing.
You couldn't have waited. You weren't supposed to mail it. You had to go run to the bank right after they gave it to you to beat everyone else there.
A couple times. No money.
Oh,
so I was like, okay, I'm not going to do this. So as I was saying, my dad was in the ad game at Leo Burnett, managed the Philip Morris business. He connected with, he's like, hey, look, you got to get into the sales business in media. And so I ended up doing that. fall of 89. And he was running somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 billion worth of media. So he had a lot of media companies. So I interviewed with a bunch of publications like Time Inc. that doesn't exist anymore, or Hearst, et cetera, et cetera. But a guy that I had caddied for at Bobolink, Paul Day was his name. He was the publisher of the magazine. Interviewed with him and had 2 offers to get into the media sales game. One was with Sport Magazine, which doesn't exist anymore. U.S. News is now entirely an online piece.
Sport. Yeah, I had a subscription.
Sport Magazine. I really wanted to go there, but it was like, because U.S. News was more of the quote unquote big leagues. And so was taught the media sales game at U.S. News, and then progressed in my career there to Time Inc., launched ESPN, the magazine, got hired by ESPN, launching that magazine when we were living in Detroit. Then went to Car and Driver Road and Track, ended up working my way up the ranks there to run the entire business operations for those 2 brands and take them digital. They were acquired by another New York publishing house, Hearst. At that point, my kids were in high school, and they're like, hey, if you're running the business side of what we do, because magazines had 2 sides of the house. You had content editorial and you had business side. If you're going to run the business side, you need to be in New York. And I didn't want to move to New York. I didn't want to put my kids, like, they're in high school. I'm not taking them out of high school. So I went to a company called Velasas. So I went to go run the CPG business there for about 8 years, and had a lot of fun learning another piece of that business. When I was at Car and Driver Road and Track and ESPN, it was all automotive. I was glad to get out of automotive because it's a really narrow vertical industry and highly competitive, and I wanted to broaden my horizons. Did that for 8 years. We had moved down to Atlanta. COVID hit, and I ended up going into leadership and sales coaching. Did that for about 8 months, and then the company I work for now is MSpark, and went with them a little over 3 years ago to run local sales. But let's call it 23 months ago, almost 24 to right where we are right now, our company was up for sale. And I was running local sales. So I had north of 120 people, 15 leaders. We were running a pretty good chunk of the business, but we were up for sale, owned by private equity, turned over 4 times. So there was a ton of debt. The CEO at the time said, I'm out. I know we're selling the business, but I'm going to go do another thing. I've been offered a CEO job, yada, yada. 4 people at the table, and 3 of the 4 walked away, and then the 4th walked away. And we've got 500 employees at this company and 500 families, and I'm like, this is crazy. So my youngest son-in-law that I mentioned, whose dad was a Lions coach, he's in the what I would call the boutique PE space, independent sponsor model, where they go find money and they buy companies, roll them up, and get it. And he's like, why don't you buy the company? I'm like, I don't think I have the resources to buy a $200 million top line company. He's like, no, you don't need to have the money. I figure out how to do this. So he connected me with someone that he knew in that space, 2 guys at Creekstone Capital here in Atlanta. Long story short, after a brief period of time, got them connected with the investment bank, put a plan together. When I initially sold them of how to optimize and transform our business, we bought the business. They technically own most of it, but bought the business. Final sale on February 1st of 24. And so I'm the CEO of MSpark. We're transforming it into a fully modern media company right now over the last 18 months, diversifying our revenue out of print. We've got just north of 450 employees at this point right now. Based out of Birmingham, Alabama is where the company's headquartered. We've got sellers all over the country. Got some leadership here in Atlanta with me, guy who runs revenue, our SVP of revenue. My CFO's here. My COO's over in Birmingham, but we got people that are fully distributed. Think hybrid work environment. COVID really changed the dynamic of how we operate. Lead a company of 450 people, 200 million top line. It's funny, Nick mentioned this word about resilience and competitiveness and how to get after it. And I look back at what I learned as an athlete, not just at Iowa, before and after, and decisions to make and how to handle pressure and all that kind of stuff and what it takes and preparation, like all of that stuff. And I smile and look back at the journey that I've been on. And I think, oh my goodness, how many teammates, coaches, administrators, unknown to me at the time, were building in the tools and the opportunities into how I do what I do right now as a leader at our company. I've got a business review tomorrow morning with our ownership group. Like, hey, here's how May was. And like, you don't go into those meetings like, hey, whatever, let's just talk about how it went. That's not how you do it. And I just think about, and I'm not saying I play perfect business because I don't, but I look back at the people that, as I said, unknown to me, but then you begin to look back and recognize what they were doing to build those qualities into me, or me learn from them or watch them and observe them and be like, oh my gosh, this is like what life requires. And also how to be a teammate, how to understand yourself in hierarchy, how to put work in when you don't want to work. Like you just don't want to, how to prioritize, what you put value on, all those kinds of things.
Holding the tackling dummies.
Yeah, like humility, the ability to do that in a pouring rain when it's 42 degrees outside and you're in gray sweats. Like what that builds in you ultimately in your life. Like I'm a huge fan of team sports. Like your daughter, Nick, I look at that and I'm like, there's a purpose to what you do every day, right? Details matter. Preparation matters. Sleep matters. The gym matters. Your nutrition matters. Who you hang out with, all that stuff.
Yeah,
It matters. Some people are like, some people get lucky. I'm like, yeah, people who work their butts off get luckier than people that don't.
Yep.
Put
It's
it that way.
coincidence.
And sometimes really shitty things happen to you that aren't your fault. And the question is, how are you going to react to them? Are you going to complain and moan and be mad about it? Or are you going to figure out a way to get it done? And I go back to my days at Iowa and I'm like, that's where I learned it. And it's painful and it's not fun and you don't want to do any of that stuff, but I don't have to think twice about, am I putting the work in? Because that just was expected. And I do have kind of the crazy, I want to achieve piece of me. Like I'm going to keep going. I get part of it's my personality type, I'm made up and all that kind of stuff. But looking back, I just think if it wasn't for Iowa and that 3.5, 4 year period, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be sitting where I'm sitting doing what I'm doing today. As a person, as a father, as a husband, as a grandfather, as a business professional, friendships, relate, all that stuff, you look back and you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then connecting with you two guys, like, hey, you guys want to sit down and talk for a couple hours about Iowa? I'm like, heck yeah. Who wouldn't? Yeah, there were some breaks that were made for me, and maybe I made some of my own breaks, but there were a whole lot of people that gave me opportunity that didn't have to give me opportunity. And Iowa was one of those places that did that. So I'll be forever grateful for that. And guys like you that still care about old guys like me.
Well, we're right there with you. Yeah.
That's profound. We've all been through it and have had those people that have shaped who we are, and to hear the impacts these people have had. Yeah, that's great. It's wonderful. And it's great, like the community we have, that we can be, 12, 15 years apart and still have the same shared bond. We talk to guys that were younger than us, older than us. It's the same shared thing. It's same shared experience, and that's, it's great that way. So
Yeah, I just think there's a culture. That's what I tell people. Iowa's a special place. It is. And I'm sure the people in Athens, Georgia say the same thing. But I would argue it's different. It's different in Iowa. And you don't know it till you've been in it, you've experienced it, and you go, oh, I see how it's different. Because people actually genuinely care, I think, in a different way than just, hey, you're important because you're an athlete. That's the whole John Streif thing. And there are so many other people that could be mentioned. Same thought. I think about what you two guys are doing. This is a pretty cool thing to make sure you connect cross-generationally, people that have been in the program, talk about your experience and why it's cool. And I think real fans of Iowa, that's part of the reason they're crazy fans. And Iowa can go to the Big Ten championship game and get smoked by Michigan. And like they get in it a year later or 2 years later, people are showing up. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for tonight.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for going deep with us and telling all the stories. That was a great show. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and just getting to know you over the years. You're a big role model for me growing up. I was an Iowa City kid, wanting to be a kicker, and my dad was on the police force, and he said he bothered you a bunch, asking a bunch of questions about what to do to be a kicker. And actually,
Yeah.
I just remembered, he said that you told him to get the Jan Stenerud kicking tee and book, and that's how I end up getting it, because he said he did talk to you, and that was your recommendation to him. So I have to thank you for that too. But
Oh, you're welcome.
I just remembered that, yeah, he got that because Rob said, I needed to get this for you. And he went and found it probably at the John Wilson Sports downtown in Iowa City. And
There you go.
But yeah, just to even be part of a team that put Iowa on the map. And that was just every kid I know growing up, that was like the pinnacle. It was the 1985 Iowa football season, brought it to attention and made it exciting. And kids our age it was like unbelievable time. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Special to be a part of it. It really was. And like you could go game by game and look at, it wasn't just one guy. There were certain people that obviously got great opportunities, but there were some unsung heroes, guys like Willie Bishop, who I don't think he ever played a down at Iowa, but played more downs than he probably would care to remember on a scout team, that made the team better. Because he showed up every day and played hard on the scout team.
You have to have great scout team players.
Yeah, and his dad was a player and all that kind of stuff, but I think he was a roommate of one of my best buddies there. He didn't play scout team for 1 year. Like the whole time he was at Iowa, he played scout team. And I think he dressed for maybe 2 games. So it's funny because like I watched the movie Rudy and people are like, why do you like that movie? I'm like, because man, I'm telling you. And whatever you say about him, but I just like just an ode to that pursuit, I got some pretty mad respect for it. Put the work in.
For sure.
Even you just going out on your own, right? And just working your way back in there. Like that's an amazing story in itself of just, okay, life did this. And then you were like, no, I'm putting myself back into that stream to do the thing I want. I think that's where people see success and they see all these people that, oh, you've done this and that, but they don't see the ins and outs of all that, right? They don't see the ups and downs and you pushing your way into some spot that you weren't, or having someone push you or give you an opportunity, all those things. People are like, oh, I want to get my kid into the pros. And you're like, shit, man, this is a winding road for you. There's no formula. It's like here, A to Z. It's all over the place, right? It's you get in and work and hope you get a shot and do well and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. My first thought when you were saying that, Nick, is you look at Arch Manning in today's society would be like, you're not going to play me at Texas. I'm leaving. And I'm pretty sure the Manning families know there's certain ways you do this and ultimately will be rewarded for that work. That doesn't mean that you're not, like you said, you're not going to have the twists and turns. And that's the only way you get better in life, I think. Look, resistance is not futile. What's futile is if you end up meeting resistance the exact same way every single time. You got to get creative with how you get through resistance. We don't control everything that goes on in our lives. It's how you react to it. But don't blame resistance for being the reason that you can't be successful. To me, it's like creativity. And look, give me a creative person that just works their tail off all day.
Yeah.
We've all heard the people with the sob stories too of, I almost made it. I could have been a professional. I could have made the college team. And it's because you probably faced resistance and you didn't overcome it, unfortunately. But there's a reason you didn't make it. It's tough.
It is. And that's one of the key things. That's probably what makes Iowa special is there's a humble swagger to Iowa. There's a humility that people respect, but there's also swagger when the whistle blows and it's time to go. And so you marry those two things together, look out. It's funny. I ran into a guy professionally who played at Michigan And another guy who played at Northwestern, they said the same thing. One thing we knew when we played Iowa, boy, you better be ready to get hit because they weren't playing around. You better be ready to stick to your game plan. And if the game plan blows up, you better have a plan B or D. This guy who played lineman in Michigan, he goes, we used to hate playing Iowa because we knew we were going to be sore and beat up and we were done. And maybe we were going to win more than we lost, but it was one of those, do we really have to go do this? I took some pride when I heard that from him. I wasn't the guy hitting him. I was just the kicker. But I hear that, and I think if you played at Iowa, that's a pride thing for me. And for anybody else that played there. They may not win as much as Georgia or Alabama or any of that kind of stuff. You talk to anybody that knows football, though, they're like, oh, Iowa does it the right way.
I think that's a good spot to stop.
All right, bud.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, man. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
It was good spending some time with you on this call. I feel better for it. Thank you for letting me share my memories and for your interest.
Yeah, no, great stories. I think everyone's going to enjoy them.
Cool.
Yeah, we really appreciate you.
You guys be well. All right.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, Rob.